This is Rebel Mom Boss, the podcast for scrappy, rebellious moms who are making things happen while raising their babies. My name is Robyn Flynn, a scrappy, rebellious mom myself, and the founder and managing director of Robyn Flynn Media. I'm also a mom to a beautiful toddler named Peyton. We do things a little bit differently here, so buckle up and welcome to the rebellion. We're told all the time that networking is the key to a successful career in just about everything, but how do you actually do that? It can feel impossible to make a lasting impression in a world where you're applying for jobs online, you're attending virtual job interviews, you're working from home. It can be really hard to form meaningful connections with colleagues. So how can we make ourselves and our skill sets stand out? And how can we build our network when most of us work from home? Amanda Graham is an entrepreneur, consultant, networking expert, comedy writer, and a cult survivor. She specializes in helping anyone who may not fit the typical mold, whether that's because they're neurodivergent, grew up low income, whatever the case may be. Amanda, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome to the Rebellion.
I'm very excited. I love being around rebellious people. That's my favorite thing in the world, Robyn. So thank you for asking me on board.
Of course. So I found out like moments before we started chatting that you're a comedy writer, which is so cool. That's something, I guess we kind of have in common because I took a comedy writing class and it was like the scariest, most exhilarating thing I've ever done. I'm so curious how you got into that.
Well, I had always wanted to do comedy. And when I started working in TV, I had, kind of geared toward it. I was like desperate to work on the fourth floor of BBC Comedy. And because my background was in religious stuff, they kind of put me in religion and ethics instead. So I just looked longingly at all of the comedians and all the wonderful people who were coming in to shoot films and to shoot TV shows. So one day, BBC Comedy told me if I wanted to work in comedy, I needed to show them I was serious about it. So I needed to do stand-up and I needed to run comedy nights. So that's what I did. I did it for 1.5 years, 2 years. And then someone saw me on stage and they liked my set. So they told their executive producer. And the executive producer sent me an email saying, send me your best 5 jokes. Like, no pressure, right? And so that's what I did. And then the next thing I knew, I was in a writer's room, like a residential for a weekend with a bunch of other writers. It was wonderful. That's how I got my break.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Stand-up comedy is definitely one of the scariest things I've ever done, which is wild because, I worked in radio for years and years. So, I was used to being behind a microphone. I was used to talking to thousands of people every day. But it was the first time that they're all looking at you and they're expecting you to make them laugh. Like, that is so, so intimidating.
Oh, God, it's the worst. And because everybody has a different idea of what's funny, there's like such a challenge to entertain as many people in the room as possible. And what's hilarious about stand-up is the nights that you smash it, you will surprise you. And the nights that you die on your ass will surprise you as well.
Absolutely. I've always found, too, that like being funny is a great way to build your professional network. Like my goal in every meeting I've ever been in is to make people laugh at least once because it puts everybody at ease and they feel comfortable with you. They remember you. Is that sort of something you've used to help people build their network? Because networking is actually really difficult.
100%. And I couldn't agree with you more, Robyn. It is difficult. And I think one of the reasons why my session does so well is because, when you look online, and you see all the networking advice, it is so boring. It is so boring. It's like impossible to not fall asleep. So what I wanted to do with my session was kind of draw attention to the absurdity, how ridiculous it is that we have to do this, you know what I mean? And how ridiculous the challenges that we have are. And so what I did was I made a session that combined my stand-up comedy experience and kind of my talent making memes and stuff like that, as well as the kind of cold, hard information that you need to get where you need to go.
What are the skills that someone would get from your networking sessions or workshops?
Oh, gosh. Well, I do different sessions to different people, depending on what their needs are. But I do specialize in people who have tremendous obstacles because, girl, like I was the worst. I was the worst at networking. Like I cannot overemphasize it. And especially in the TV and film industry, networking is absolutely essential because 90% of the jobs are, word of mouth. And that's where you get your collaborations from and stuff as well. And so I had kind of done this thing where I would either make huge mistakes or not network, you know what I mean? And so what I had to do was reverse engineer all my mistakes. And so I put it into different categories. One is like the networking attitudes that will surprise you, that will help kind of get you through and make things a little bit easier for you, in your head. The next is how to network in person, which is obviously the worst thing that any of us could ever do in person with the big bad groups and all that in big, huge rooms. And then also, I do teach things like networking on social media, but that's always tricky because they change the algorithm so quickly that, you have to keep it quite simple, quite basic. But the big one that people really love, besides the networking in person, is how to get a cold email opened and answered. That is the biggest problem that most people have. So yeah, those are the skills that people leave with. And it's lovely because I run into people literally on the street, or I get, emails from people going, I've just been to this festival, or I've just done this, and I listened to your foot thing. Your foot thing is real. So yeah, it's
your foot thing.
Yes, the foot thing. Do you want me to tell you the foot thing? Do you want me to give you a little secret?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So because I'm autistic, I have to do a lot of research into you human beings and how you function. And body language for me is one of the ways that I can kind of figure out what's going on. Because I can't decode sometimes what people are trying to say if they're being indirect. Anyways, so one of the big things that's really tricky about like in a big room, right? So we've got the three different zones in a room. We've got the start zone where you get your little lanyard and you hang up your coat and everything. Then we've got the side zone, which is the introvert's lair, where you're like, you don't want to talk to anybody. So you just get your phone, you get your mobile phone and you pretend you're a very busy person. You're a very busy person answering loads of emails. You couldn't possibly talk to anyone in the room. And then you've got the zone of action, which is in the middle. And that's where the BBGs are. Those are the big bad groups. And I couldn't ever figure out how to approach a group, or 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, or whatever. How do you know which group is open? So when I did some research into body language in groups and dynamics and everything, I learned, and this is real, I promise you. But when you see a group and they're all facing each other and all of their their feet are pointed into the center, do not interrupt that group. It doesn't matter if it's 2 people, 5 people, 20 people, because that group is mid-flow and they do not want to be interrupted. So if you interrupt them, what you're doing is, like, have you ever been to the bar or whatever with your mates, and then somebody pulls up a chair who you don't even know and just sits down there, some drunk person or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's what you do. So what you do, look at the feet. If they're all pointed in toward each other, come back in 5 or 10 minutes. But if there's someone there and their toe is pointed out, that person is thinking of leaving the group. Now, they might not realize it yet. It might be a subconscious thing like, I need a wee, or this is the most boring conversation. How the hell do I get out of this? But they are going to leave the group. And so that's the group that you can approach, because now you can wait till they leave and everything kind of reshuffles, or you can kind of geg in there and then give them the lovely excuse that they're hoping for to leave eventually anyways. So, and I always tell people because I have done this session a million times, and their faces are always like that. And I'm like, if you don't believe me, go to a party, a networking thing, and just watch it happen from the side, and you will see who makes mistakes with approaches and who doesn't. So wow, the foot thing is an unstoppable tip.
I'm never going to be able to unsee that now. I'm going to be paying attention to everybody's feet. I saw this great meme online this week, specifically talking about like icebreakers and those kinds of events in corporate settings. And somebody said, I would rather eat a jean jacket than share a fun fact about myself. And, I had to laugh at that because, like, I have always kept, like, I have like 2 or 3 fun facts about myself that I use for those moments. And like the way I had it in my head, like my dream in life is to be a contestant on Jeopardy. Like I desperately want to be on Jeopardy. And I was like, what would be my fun fact that I would share about myself after the first commercial break on Jeopardy? So I've always had that in my mind. And I'm curious to, I guess other people, normal people, non-neurodivergent people don't do that. Is that a thing?
Oh, who knows what they don't do? I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's okay. They're people too. They're people too. It's so tricky. I like to lead with humor because I figure, well, because number one, I write comedy, right? So that's my gig. But, and if you hate the way I approach, you're probably going to hate me anyway. So it's a great way to self-select out of things, right? But I like to just go, one of the things that always works is, especially if it's a group that looks like fun or it looks like they know each other really well, which can be really intimidating, is I just go up there and go, hello, my name is Amanda Graham. I don't know anyone here, or it looks like you guys are having a fun time. It looks like you're actually the most fun group, and that's why I thought I'd approach you. And every time they go, oh, like that, you say they're the funnest group or the coolest group or whatever else. And then I go right into getting them to talk about themselves. So how do you guys all know each other? Or if they're like a really fun group, I love to ask, who's the troublemaker? Who's the troublemaker here? And it's so funny because if you just get them into an excited mode where they're talking about how they know each other, they're bringing up stories, they're laughing, and whatever else. And it's just, I like to get people talking about themselves right away because it puts them more at ease. People love talking about themselves. They love it. So that's my approach, is doing that first.
That's so cool. What do you think limits people from forming those connections? Is it the voices in their head? Is it their own insecurities? What is holding people back?
That's a great question. I mean, most of us suffer from imposter syndrome, like at one stage or another. And I'm always telling people about imposter syndrome. There are things, first of all, I think one of the biggest things that's most helpful is understanding that everyone suffers from it. And if they don't, they've done the work and they are really secure in themselves, and that's great. They could give us some advice on that, or they're lying because everyone goes through it. So what I like to tell people is to chart your own successes, because we forget how far we've come. Do you know what I mean? We forget, so what I like to do is, put things in my notes, like on my iPhone, right? Because I can't do a spreadsheet. I forget a spreadsheet exists 3 days after I open one, right? So forget it. But I like to do, like, every time I have a little triumph, every time I try something, every time, I have a breakthrough, I put it in a thing for the year, and then I look at it at the end of the year or when I need to and go, so that's one thing. But I think the biggest attitude adjustment that we can make, that most people don't realize, is that networking isn't what we can get from people. It's how we can use our skills and experience to help other people meet their goals. That is what it comes down to. That doesn't mean we don't tamp ourselves down. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. But what we need to do with networking is find out about those people, because we need to figure out if we like them. We need to figure out if they're aligned, and we don't know how to sell ourselves if we don't find out a little bit about them, what they're about, what's important to them. And so I think it's really about giving.
It's like dating. The way you're describing it, it sounds like dating.
This is exactly it. I'm so glad you said that, Robyn, because I do use the dating thing. It's like when you go on a date, you should not be worried about whether they like you. No. We haven't gotten there yet. You got to worry about what you think of them. Then we'll worry about whether they like you. Do you know what I mean? So,
yep.
Yeah.
You've got a book coming out soon, right?
Yes, I do.
At the end of April? Is it about,
Yes.
What is it about? Tell us about it.
The book is called Great Stuff to Read When You're About to Lose Your Shit. And it is about the surviving and getting through really tough times. And and the networking thing is all part of it and everything, but I spent the last 10 years learning a lot about human nature and about myself and what I'm capable of. And so what I did was I started gathering all of the knowledge that I have learned over this last decade, which I've considered my wilderness decade. I think we all have times where we're just so alone or isolated, and nothing has any meaning anymore, and we might have to reevaluate who we are, what our identities are, and whatever else. And so one of the things I found really frustrating over this last 10 years was I have a million self-help books. Like, they're all behind me, they're fab. But one of the things is they assume that when you're in a crisis, when things are really bad and you're in a fog, they assume that you've got 2 hours a day to read a 40-page chapter and fill out a notebook. And that is not how crises work. Our lives are messy. And some days we haven't got the strength to do anything except read a sentence. So what I wanted to do was create a book that gives you what you want depending on what your energy levels are. So if you need a story, you get a story. If you need a sentence, you get a sentence. If you need a joke, you get a joke, or an example that can inspire you or whatever else. So, and I just wanted to meet people where they were, because I know what it's like to not have that.
It reminds me when I had my daughter, everybody had given me these like baby books to fill out. And inevitably after like 6 weeks, you stop filling them out because you don't have time. You're too busy. But one of my friends gave me a book that was called A Line a Day. And every day you just write one line. And that is so much easier to commit to, because some days it's just, I'm so exhausted, I don't want to do this. And other days you're like writing about something cute your daughter did or whatever. It's so much easier to commit to. So that's, I feel like those giant workshop journal things that you have to do are just not sustainable for people to actually do.
That's so interesting. Did you find, I'm so curious, Robyn, did you find that when you were doing that, that because the obligation was taken away of having to do so much, that it was just easier, and sometimes you wrote more than a line, or you wrote more or whatever else? Boom.
100%. It was like a friend of mine who's a writer says every day I commit to writing for 10 minutes. I set a timer, and when that timer goes off, I'm done. If I feel like continuing to write, I'll keep writing, but I have to at least write until that timer goes off. And that's how they sort of train themselves to force themselves to sit down and write every day. I love that concept. I feel like when you have that tiny commitment, it makes it so much easier. It's like, cleaning your desk versus cleaning your whole office. It's so much easier to commit to the desk. And once you start cleaning your desk, you're probably going to clean your whole office too, right?
Of course.
But it's just easier mentally. I wanted to talk also a little bit about the fact that you're a cult survivor, if we may.
Sure.
I recently read actually a really great book by Bethany Joy Lenz, who's an actress who is also a cult survivor. I read it because I loved the show One Tree Hill, and she was an actress on that show. So I bought it because I was like, oh, I love that show. And then the book was amazing because her experience was just so harrowing, and, her resilience was truly astounding. So I'm curious what your experience was like, because I think when people hear cult, they think of like, the big famous ones that, have all the celebrities and stuff, when in reality, it's almost more insidious than that.
Oh, it's much worse than that, because, the problem is not every cult is like everybody dresses in robes and looks like Jesus and, lives in the middle of nowhere. That's not it. And especially in America, I'm from England, but I grew up in America. And so I used to live there. And a lot of churches in small towns, large towns, whatever, are set up like this. And I was 12 or 13 when we joined it. It was in upstate New York, and it was ruled by a man who is still a pastor at a different church. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. And it started off exactly textbook. Love bombing, acceptance. We had stuff to do every day or night at the church. There was always activities going on. But really, it was because they wanted you there, so that you weren't doing anything else. But then it was things like we weren't allowed to watch TV. We weren't allowed to even listen to Christian rock music. We weren't allowed to wear pants, which when you're ice skating outside in upstate New York, it is, and it's like the wind chill is 20 to 40 below zero. It's unbelievable. And then it got a lot more insidious. Like we were doing things like the boys were always allowed to do whatever they wanted, right? Like they were allowed, like during youth, they could go out and play, they could go out and wrestle, they could do all this stuff. And we were inside learning how to breastfeed at like 13 years old, learning all these types of things. Obviously full submission and all that. And as the time went on, the pastor it just became a lot darker. And what happened essentially was he had raped at least 6 women that we know of in the church. And I can't give specifics about how this happened because it's somebody else's story and not mine to tell. But what happened was the pastor ended up threatening to kill us, and if somebody in the family had told on him. And then they did, and he came after us, and we had to go into hiding for a couple of days. And meanwhile, the church spectacularly blew up, and they made these poor women, I remember this, like after everything blew over, they made all these women march to the front in what's called an altar call. I don't know if there's like a phrase in Canada that's basically what it is the piano at the end of the service, the piano plays, and if you feel led by the Lord, you go up to the front and you maybe need extra prayer or whatever. But if you have sin to confess, you go confess it in front of everyone. And they made those poor women go up and confess their sexual sins. He wasn't even in the room. And as a matter of fact, his wife was there and his wife's mother was there. And I will never forget the way she screamed at them about how much bitterness she had toward them. And he just completely blew everyone's lives away. And what was super scary was he did it to these women through counseling first, right? So like he had a special burden for wayward women or women who were challenged in their lives, like divorced or widowed or whatever else. And I was next in line. So what he would do is he would groom them in the counseling, and then it would happen from there and then expand from there. And then what he would do is he would tell these women, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill your family, essentially. And then just before it all blew up, I was the next in line because he had said I should go into counseling because I was too rebellious and whatever else. And so I think I was 14 then. 14. Yeah. So I guess I was next in line. But
I feel like every time I hear a story about a cult, it's just so predominantly anti-woman.
Oh, 100%.
Like, I feel like every time I hear stories from survivors, it's these brave women telling these stories. I so rarely hear from men because even men who were in cults were in it in a very different way than the women were.
Mm-hmm. And it's tricky to reconcile that. Not once did any man speak up through that entire thing. And what was hilarious was, of course, the pastor was teaching them that they were the ones who were in power. They were the ones who were in control. They were the heads of the family. They were the mouthpiece between, God, pastor, and then husband. And despite the fact that they had been gassed up this whole time, they still were too afraid to say anything. And that was brutal. That was really, really difficult.
So what do you do after an experience like that? How do you move on and deal with that trauma and continue with your life?
It was tricky because we were told to keep it quiet. So I didn't even start talking about it until I moved back to the UK when I was in my early 20s. So I still have mixed feelings about it was long ago enough where I've processed a lot of it. What I still struggle with is it's very difficult to come from a place where men, this is obviously not all men, I'm just talking about these men, exploit their power and they're rewarded, to look around the world today and see the same thing happening over and over again and feeling really powerless about it. It's very difficult. And especially being an autistic person, because I have that extra delightful flavor of serious justice wired into my head. And so I do suffer sometimes from moments of, I literally don't know what to do. This can't be the way things are. This cannot be the way things are. So, and I, but I'm detached enough where I wrote a show about it. I can write about it. I can talk about it. But I'd be better if there was justice. in the world.
Yeah, that I love that you said flavor because I've been asked that before. What flavor of neurospicy are you? And yeah, that like heightened sense of justice
It's
is,
so, do you
I think,
struggle with it?
I do struggle with it. Like
Yeah.
I've always been such a rule follower. And whenever somebody breaks the rules and doesn't face any consequences for it, it drives me absolute like during the pandemic, I was so frustrated like at grocery stores when we all had to follow the arrows that were on the ground and
Yeah.
other people would be going in opposite directions and not following it. And like I would just be so angry inside and I was like, why does this bother me so much? Like I can't imagine how triggering for you sometimes the world can be
It's
because
just
this kind of stuff is just
it's everywhere. Yeah, it's really, and it's very difficult. But what's weird about rules is like I still need to see the sense in them, right? Like I get mad at rules that don't make sense. I get mad at rules that are stupid, but but I am like the most legalistic person if the rule makes sense, and I get tempted to tell on people. You know what I mean? Like it's funny. I don't know. Let's be. Yeah, I do.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Which is funny because I'm such a rule follower, but I've always considered myself rebellious because I've always done things differently than were expected of me. You know, it was like, go to university. Nope, don't like this. Drop out after 2 years. Do something else. Like to me, I always felt very rebellious in that sense, but I never broke any rules specifically.
Do you think that the rebellious thing comes because you're forced to do things your own way because the way that things are generally done isn't the right way? Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
probably. Like the societal expectation for the order of things never worked for me. That just wasn't.
Do you find
It's
that do you find that gets worse as you get older? Because I just get more and more like, this is bullshit. You know what I mean? When I look around at stuff and go, okay, I'm going to have to do things a different way.
Well,
Thank you very much for making it
especially
difficult for
now
me.
that I'm a mom. You know, there are certain things I thought you had to do and be as a mother to raise a child. And I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I'm going to do what works for my kid because she's her own person. So, you know, like it's daylight savings when we're recording this and my daughter's just not sleeping because none of us are sleeping right now. And, you know, she woke up last night at like 10 o'clock at night and she was like, I just want my iPad. And I was like, okay, cool. I gave it to her. My husband's like, why are you giving her her iPad at 10 o'clock at night? I'm like, because I don't want to argue with her. What difference does it make?
Yeah.
She's awake anyway. So I'm sure like every parenting book out there would say like, don't do that. But I'm like, I'm the boss. I make the rules.
Oh
Which
yeah,
is,
no. I hate all that shame crap that like comes with motherhood. Like I've never experienced anything like it's crazy. They start from when you're pregnant. They do it to us. People do it. Women, we get it all the time, anyways. But like motherhood, it's a specific subcategory of shame and shaming that it doesn't make any sense. Well, first of all, and it clearly it comes from people's own insecurities, you know what I mean, or need to establish dominance or need to feel better about themselves and the decisions they're making with their children. But my heart breaks for mothers because I get that sometimes it's difficult to tell people to sod off, you know, when they're being judgmental, whether it's about how you're doing your pregnancy or whether your kid has chicky nuggies, you know, on a Saturday or whatever else. And it's crazy. Or even just like getting judged by other moms, you know, during the school run or whatever. It's bananas. And I think part of it, one of the wonderful things about getting older, because I'm 53 now, is you just don't care anymore. You do not care. And because I don't care about social hierarchies, because my experience with power ain't so great, you know, so I have like this double thing about like basically just giving two middle fingers to anyone who tries to tell me what to do or judge me. But I definitely understand that that is not the case for most people. And I just feel for mothers who have that burden of shame that stops them from doing what they want to do, that stops them from feeling like they can talk to other people about their problems, you know, and all of the other things that kind of come with motherhood that are on the challenges side.
where can people go to learn more about you and your work? You have a website. It's amandagraham.com, right?
Yes, and it's got, see, one of the things, Robyn, I did not think about when I chose the URL or like the www thing is, when I say it's Amanda Graham, they go, oh, okay, www.amandagraham.com. And I'm like, no, it's Amanda Graham. It's like a Abbott and Costello moment or something. It's like, no, it's www.ITSAMANDAGRAHAM. Amanda, yeah. And then I've got all the stuff on there. So
the website, it's amandagraham.com.
It's Amanda Graham, which sounds really obnoxious, but Amanda Graham was taken, and what am I going to do? So
yeah, no, I love it. I think it's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate you sharing your story and a little bit of insight with us.
Oh, you know what? It's been an absolute pleasure, Robyn. I really, really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
If you like what you heard today, make sure you follow and subscribe to Rebel Mom Boss with Robyn Flynn wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, and make sure to leave a review because that's how other moms will find the podcast too. Until next week.